Hey, Tubies! This is Psychic Bob. Well, it is so rocking to be with you. Well, welcome. Here we are. It's Sunday, and that means it's the witching hour. And you know me, I'm all about the witching hour. And I think it's going to just be just me tonight, really, with you guys. It seems like I think it's because the holiday weekend, everybody's tied up. So I don't know what's going on, but you know what? Hey, the show goes on no matter what. It really does. I'm just so glad you guys are here. And, you know, I am just thankful for your presences. So tonight we're going to, just talk about a few things. I thought we'd talk a little bit about divination tonight because that's something that I think is always fascinating and always fun. And, very interesting. Hold on, guys. Just I got to get my chat going here. So bear with me here. We're going to get that going. You know, Psychic Bob's always technically challenged. All right. Well, here we are. It looks like we got a number of wonderful people here tonight. Let's see who we got. I can't see anything. I'm half blind, but it looks like Armani's here. Yay. And then we've got Susan C. is here. Timothy Gallick is here. Jennifer Croxton, Mama Bird, G-Dog's here. Gab Hines. I love it. Well, you guys are rocking. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for taking the time to come out and be with us tonight. It's always a treat. It's always a pleasure to have you guys here. So anyways, I don't know what it's been like where you are, but it has been god-awful hot here. Again, my air conditioning's gone out, so I got fans going in the background. So if you guys are hearing some fans, that's what's going on. Anyways, I'm doing well. It's just been a busy week. I want to say thank you to all of you who've been calling for readings. My gosh, I tell you, it's been a lot of fun. I've been real busy. And if you're calling me to get on my schedule, not to worry. I do have a little bit of a backlog, but we are getting to you as quickly as we can. So I'm just glad you guys are here. Anyways, I've been wanting to show you stuff. I've been lately, as many of you have been following my channel, I've been exploring art and trying to learn about artworks. And anyways, I've been working on channeling some of the great painters. And I was going to show you my latest painting. As many of you know, I have a love for Jackson Pollock. He's one of my favorite artists. And I'm going to show you my new painting I just made. I made this a few days ago. It's done in the style Jackson Pollock. I sit and meditate before I paint, and I asked Jackson Pollock if he could to just channel through me. How do you guys like it? It's a combination. If you look closer, there's a lot of different colors, and I've got layers. I got gray and black and white and blue and all sort of colors. But anyways, I'm still working on a name for this one. I might just call it Cosmic Blue #1. What do you think about that, huh? Anyways, I tell you, I'm having so much fun with my painting, and I'm going to keep doing more. These are kind of my smaller canvases, which are kind of my, what do you want to call it, my experimental canvases. Eventually, I'm going to do large, like 3 feet by 5 feet canvases, But it's fun to start just working with my energy and techniques because I really believe that artwork is a form of spirituality. It's a form of channeling. And the great teachers, the great artists are available to us, So you might say, well, gee, Bob, I can't paint. I don't know about that. Well, you can if you channel a great master. Maybe you could get Picasso to teach you from the spirit. I've met other psychics. In fact, there are an entire class of psychics who do channeled artworks. And the work that they do is beyond belief. And in their natural waking state, they really don't paint that well. But when they go into a trance and they paint, they create masterpieces. So I've been working on connecting with Jackson Pollock, and I had a lot of fun with this. I hope you guys enjoy that. Anyways, I'm so glad that you're here. And, every Sunday when we gather, I always call it the gathering of the tribes. That's right. We got a lot of people gathering. And I want to welcome all of you. Hey, Mama Bird's here. Good to see you here. And let's see, Gav Hines is here. And G-Dog just said, can you tell us about Burning Man? Hey, G-Dog, I'm not really that involved with Burning Man, but I know people that go to it every year, and they say it's wonderful. It's kind of, I call Burning Man the gathering of the tribes. It's spiritually oriented people. And I think that they literally burn a giant man, like made of wood or wicker. And it comes from the ancient pagan traditions. Like they would offer a straw man, a sacrifice, as a sign of the gods, or a sign to the gods, or represented the god. And um, people find Burning Man to be a time where they get in touch with themselves. I think particularly if you're pagan, it's very challenging to live in this world when you don't feel connected to other pagans. Many of us are solitary. And as you know, that's why we have the Order of the Purple Cord, because the Order of the Purple Cord allows us to to really get in touch with other pagans, and so we don't feel alone on the path. And I think Burning Man serves a very valuable purpose in that it brings the tribe together. I don't know about you guys, but I always find it that when I'm out in public and I run into another pagan or a Wiccan, I feel a real bonding with them. In fact, I have to tell you a story. Last week when I was at my mom's, I went to a local restaurant. I won't say which one because I don't want to give any identities away. But while I was sitting there, I was reading a book. Actually, I don't have it here, but it's a book called Triumph of the Moon. And it's by Professor Ronald Hutton. I recommend it. And Triumph of the Moon is a book where it chronologically shows the development of Wicca in the Western world. And he puts forth the argument that it was the British Isles who gave Wicca to the world. And he said it's the only religion that has ever originated from the British Isles that has been worldwide. And I think that's really true. Well, I was sitting there reading this book, and there was a lady who came up to me, a waitress, and she looked at me and she says, "I'm sorry, I'm just curious about that book you're reading. It looks kind of interesting." And I thought, uh-oh, I'm in a very small conservative Christian town. I said, should I tell them? And I said, well, it's a book about, the triumph of the gods is about the rise of Wicca in the Western world. And she looked at me with the biggest smile, and she says, "You want to know something?" I said, "What?" She says, "I'm one too." And out of her shirt, she pulled a pentacle she was wearing, similar to mine. She pulls that, she says, "I'm one too." And instantly I smiled and I thought, isn't that really cool? I mean, we had this connection. We didn't know each other, but our spiritual link brought us together. And that was really cool. So I gave her the information on the book and the names. She wrote it all down so she could go look. She said, "I have to get this book." I said, "I recommend it." So, I think that was kind of cool, And anyways, we got a lot of chat going on here. Oh, Steve Taylor's here. Rebecca's here. Rebecca's Wata. Tika's here. Hey, Tika, good to see you. I'm so glad you guys are here. And, it's like I said, so Burning Man, to go back to G-Dog's question, which I went on a tangent, but I always go on a tangent, is a gathering of the tribes. I guess that's the best way I describe it. Those of us who resonate maybe to a different drum. Maybe we don't go with our local Baptist church's sermons. Maybe we do, but some people feel a greater connection, I think, to be out under the stars, under the sun, worshiping. And I think Burning Man allows people to have that connectivity, that awareness. And I think that's so just so vital. Speaking of magical things and books, I have to show you, one of the things I'm working on this week, guys, is that I am literally digging out of my house. One of the things that happened since the fire is I realized, I said, God, if my house ever goes up, it's a fire trap. And it made me think, one of the luxuries that I miss is having a lot of open space. And I'm an Aquarian. And for those of you who are Aquariuses and Aquarians, maybe that's kind of one of our traits. Not every Aquarius is, but I think a lot of us do. We like big, large open spaces. And when I first moved to my condo, It was very empty and very open. And I remember feeling, oh, how luxurious it was. So I'm going back to that. Well, anyways, I've been literally boxing up junk, moving out stuff, and I've been uncovering old books. And I found a wonderful book that, for those of you who are starting out on the craft, this might be also a good book for you. Or if you've been a long-time crafter, maybe some of you have seen this. This is called Celtic Magic, and it's by D.J. Conway. And I love this book because, first of all, the artwork is great. Almost every chapter starts with Celtic knotwork and symbols. Can you see that? Beautiful, beautiful artworks throughout the book. Let's see here. I'll find another one. Here's another. This is lovely. You see that knot? That's the Lord and the Lady. Do you see that? And it's like an incense bowl. Of course, it could be Wiccans, a Wiccan Lord and a Wiccan Lady. I think it's the gods, but either way, isn't that mystical? I thought you guys would like that. So I recommend this book. Hi, Gavin. Gavin just said something. Hold on. Let me see, Gavin. I can't see without my glasses. Gavin says, Bob, check out a story called Dancing in Circles by Julia Hawk Moore. A grand story of a sulky woman, magic, witches, folk festivals, etc. I've been trying to talk to the author, and she's a lovely lady. I've been talking to, oh, that's wonderful, Gavin. I will definitely check that out. You know, this is one of the things that I think is wonderful, is that nowadays we can find our tribe. You know, I have to think back to like long ago, you know, like maybe the early 1900s. Imagine if you were a Wiccan person inspired by the craft. It would be dangerous in many places to even tell people, or even risk asking if somebody was interested in practicing for you. So I think that the solitary tradition is much more prevalent in the past than we even realize. A lot of people flash back to the 1970s and they say, oh, you know, it was Gardnerian Wicca was, you know, coven oriented. And if you weren't in a coven, you couldn't be a witch or Wiccan. It wasn't valid. Well, these days we know that's not true. But it's interesting because during the 70s, it became all about the covens. But really, historically, most witches and Wiccans and pagans were solitary, at least in the 20th century. So now, because we have times like these festivals like Gab is talking about, we have burning, we're able to go back to reconnecting with our tribe. And we don't have to, at least in many places, fear coming out now. You know, when you go to a festival, you know, they usually organize it like in a distant place where it's a lot of privacy. And so you can go there, openly wear your pagan and Wiccan stuff and feel at peace, you know. In the future, I would like to organize a meetup for the Order of the Purple Cord. So we're talking about that. Hopefully we'll organize that in some way. But anyways, you know, but yes. Now, as I was saying, also, I was talking about this book, though. You know me, I'm going to go on 20 tangents today. Celtic Magic, I recommend it highly because it talks about magic of the ancient Celts, talks about the Druidic magic, and it ties it in with modern day Wicca, because really the truth is that modern day Wicca has a Celtic origin, which is distinct, you know, in Western Europe. Now, all of the European nations had some form of magical practice. We're very familiar with, for example, the Asatru, the northern tradition, you know, the gods of the northern tradition, Scandinavia, you know, Norwegian. That's its unique tradition. Italy has its own tradition called Stregeria, which is the witchcraft of Italy. And Britain has its own tradition, which is Wicca. So you see, all of these different traditions exist, and all of them are valuable and valid. I myself tend to resonate more with a Celtic tradition. And what's interesting is, as many of you know, I was adopted, and I'll tell you that whole story another time if you don't know, but I met my birth family a little over 20 some, you know, 23, 24 years ago. And what's really cool is that I learned that I am Anglo-Irish, which is really cool. So I have British and Irish on my mother's side, and I've got French on my father's side. So it's really cool because, you know, the Celtic peoples, many of them are believed to be tied into the Fae. And my mother told me, she said, well, there are things in our family, a lot of mystical things happen over generations. And somebody else told me, it wasn't her, but another family member said, we might be related to the fairies of Ireland. I thought, how interesting. Isn't that fascinating? So I may have Fae blood in me. And the more I learn about the Fae, I highly suspect it. So St. Bob is Anglo-Irish, and therefore I do very much relate to Celtic magic in the Celtic Isles. And, you know, but of course, in the Order of the Purple Cord, I like to tell people you don't have to do things Bob's way. You know, some of you may practice Caribbean witchcraft. Some of you may practice an Italian form or a Northern tradition. It's okay. It doesn't matter. You know, the Purple Cord unites us all under magic. And so I'm really, you know, thankful to have you here. I'm thankful that we can all be here. Anyways, you know, I've been getting letters this week. I'm going on another tangent here, but it ties in with some of the stuff I want to talk about tonight, which is divination. And people have asked me, they said, Bob, can you talk about the black mirror? Some people have been afraid of the black mirror. And so I brought out one of my black mirrors. I have a number of them. This one was handy tonight. And this is one that I actually made myself. And the black mirror is basically a piece of black painted glass. Now, what you do is you can buy a picture frame. This is a picture frame. You remove the glass out of it. And then you paint one side of it with a black paint. Excuse me. And you actually may have to paint it several times. This one, I think, had 3 or 4 coats. So you paint it, let it dry, and then you hold the glass up to the light, because when you hold the light, you'll see areas with the paint didn't cover. You won't notice it just looking at it straight on, but you have to hold it to the light. And then you give it a second coat, and you make sure to cover those areas. Let it sit. When it dries, you then hold it to the light again. You'll still, even after 2 coats of case, you find a little area. So as I said, it takes 3 or 4 coats. This one I think had 3, maybe even 4. But it gives it such an inky, deep black look. And you can see here how it's very reflective. Very similar to a silver mirror, except it doesn't allow as much light to be reflected back. And hi, Joanne. Joanne said, that is a beautiful mirror. Oh, Dragon Rising One said he loves my t-shirt. Thank you, Dragon Rising One. I'm not being endorsed by Gucci, but I ought to be as much as I promote them. I really need to get another Louis Vuitton. I actually have one Louis Vuitton t-shirt. Louis Vuitton has endorsed my channel, so I got to say, go buy Louis Vuitton. But I do like Gucci as well, even though they don't endorse me. But that's my t-shirt. So who said witches can't be fashionable? And Christian, I can't see the name. Hold on, I got to put on my glasses here. Christian Orion, I think is the name. Christian Dura said that they love being part of the Purple Cord. I'm so glad. Thank you. Joanne B loves my mirror. And yes, and Joanne says it's very shiny. Well, the effect that you get, and see, this is part of the secret of making a black mirror, is try to buy a mirror frame that has pretty thick glass. Some glass in mirror frames is real chintzy, and some is thicker. A little heavier glass will give a better reflective surface. And then if you paint it like 3 to 4 coats, it will take it into that depth that will give you a really great scrying surface. And yes, it is shiny. Excuse me. I recommend that if you create your own scrying mirror that you use flat black paint. You can buy gloss paint, but what I find is that when you have gloss paint up against glass, it creates a weird bending of the light that makes it a little hard to see. So a flat black will give you a deeper field of vision, okay? So it's just something to think about. But anyways, in terms of scrying, you know, I recommend the black mirror. I was telling somebody earlier today, I said, you know, the first time I heard about a black mirror years ago, I thought it sounded kind of scary. Somebody said, oh, this black mirror. I thought, oh, it sounds a little ominous. I don't know why I thought that, because I love the color black, but for some reason, the idea of a black mirror made me nervous. And somebody said, Bob, just try it. You might really like it. So I did. I tried it. And I think this is probably my favorite scrying device. Now, I love crystal balls, and I also have a black crystal ball, which I'll show you in a minute. But for those of you who have said, you know, I try to do scrying and I've used a crystal ball, I've used a silver mirror, but it doesn't really get me anywhere, you might want to explore the black mirror. A lot of people who've had challenges with other forms of scrying find the black mirror to be the key. And so I'm going to recommend that to you. Now, how do you use it? Very simple. Once you make it, you want to consecrate it like you would any ritual tool. You can use incense, you can consecrate it, pray over it, bless it with holy water. A lot of people make a tincture like with mugwort, and they soak mugwort in water. It's like a tea tincture, and they clean the glass with it. Mugwort is supposed to help open portals of divination, so that's another way you can do it. So I would encourage you to explore that. But once you create it, you consecrate it. It's very simple. What you want to do is enter into a room and turn off all the lights and have maybe just one little candle going. Now, don't put the candle in front of the mirror. Put it off to the side so it's like back a little bit so it doesn't reflect in the glass. And what you'll do is you'll see such a deep field, and you'll be able to go into that and really, you know, go deep. The secret to scrying is don't strain, just relax and just let it happen. And if, you know, I encourage people, invite your spirit guides to come. You might want to say a prayer or cast even a circle. You don't have to cast a circle, but a lot of people like to do that. And so you can raise power that way, and that will further empower being able to scry. So there's something there I'd like you to explore. I think for those of you who are working on your psychic development, your spiritual development, Black Mirror, you can't go wrong with it. You really can't. So I want to put that out there and invite you to consider that, okay? Now let me show you my black crystal ball. Hold on, I got to get it over here. I've got so much junk in my house that I'm clearing out. I got stuff stacked on top of stuff. But it's going to be beautiful when it's all done. Now, this is another idea. This is kind of a cross between the crystal ball and the black mirror. It's called a black scrying ball. And this one is made of black crystal. Excuse me. They make them out of a lot of different substances. They can be made of obsidian. They can be made of glass. It doesn't really matter. It's what's important is that you resonate with the crystal. And this is a wonderful thing. I've had a lot of success also scrying with this. I just think that for me, the black surface allows me to go deeper in. And, you know, this is something else. Now, like with the scrying mirror, it's the same thing. You know, you just sit back, relax, and let it happen. The thing you do not want to do when you scry is strain yourself. Don't push yourself. This is about relaxation, because if you're all keyed up and tense, you're not going to get any visions, you know, and I think that's so important, you know. Allison Six Costello is here. Hey, hon. And she says, I absolutely love Bob's black crystal ball. Thank you so very much. Christian Druid says, actually, I use my small flat screen TV to scry. You know, and Christine says, is a black crystal easier to see things? I find that any black surface will work for you. Now, some people actually get a smoky quartz crystal or a literal black crystal. Now, you'll see I'm wearing a little black crystal, and you can buy these in larger sizes. You can use a crystal stone as well for scrying. It doesn't really matter. So, you know, but to answer Christian Druid's question, they use their flat screen TV. Can that work? Absolutely. Yes, it can. But I'm going to tell you as a psychic, now don't hate me for this, I think it's better to have something that you do not use for secular purposes. Because if you use a TV that you watch the news on and you watch, comedy shows and you watch horror shows, that's okay, but you're not giving the honor to the scrying tool. It's like television is secular. And I think when we're talking about our spiritual work, we should have something that is set aside, that is consecrated for that work. So will it work? Technically, yes. But I think you'll find that the energy stores better in a device that you only use for scrying. So I'm not knocking it. Everybody do your own thing, but that's my personal belief on that, okay? So I think it's better that you not use your computer or your phones. Somebody told me you could use your cell phone, and that's true. Here's my cell phone. Look, it's black, similar to a mirror, but I'm not going to use that as a scrying device because I do all my business through this. It carries a different vibration. And as you know, in psychic development, vibration is really important. Vibration is everything, okay? Hold on, we got a lot of questions. Okay, Divik Shuffler says, can a solitary Wiccan become a priest? And how can I achieve or practice? Hold that thought, Divix. I'm coming back to it. Joey Lightning Storm says, can you use a black tourmaline? Yes, black tourmaline is also used for scrying. Now, to go back to Divek's question about can a solitary become a priest and how do you practice? Actually, yes. Wicca is a religion. And I think that's a great question because, I sometimes forget not everybody here already knows about Wicca. So forgive me if I'm assumptive and think everybody knows what I'm talking about. I like that question because that's what I need to be reminded of. Wicca is a religion predominantly, as I was saying earlier in the show, for solitaries. Now, you can be a covenant or you can be solitary, but there is a long tradition of being solitary. In terms of becoming a priest, we believe in the Wiccan movement, the Wicca religion, that every true practitioner of Wicca becomes a priest. So how do you become a priest? You practice, you study. Being a Wiccan priest is not about power, like, oh, look at me, I'm a high priest, I have this right. It's not about that. It's about you feeling a reverence for the gods and a calling to be their servant. So to be a priest really requires humility. It means I am willing to serve. It's not about lording power, but Wicca will give you power. And this is one of the things that drew me to Wicca, because when before I was a Wiccan, I was a spiritualist, which I loved, and spiritualism helped me, but I still had a lot of vestiges of my older faith, which was a Christian faith. And I'm not knocking Christians. I know we have Christians here. But in my experience, much of my Christianity that I learned was like very passive. And it was like, well, just wait on God. It's God's will. And I realized that living my life by just waiting on God's will didn't bring me changes. And it was Wicca that said to me, you can develop your power, you can change your reality. And Wicca brought that to my life and allowed me to start to grow. And this is why I'm able to be here with you today. Because Wicca said, you don't have to sit back and just wait on other people to fix your destiny. You design it. And that's when I started working as a professional psychic and developed my own business. And it's brought me so many blessings. And these days, I literally am a full-time psychic. For those of you who are new here and don't know, all day long I do readings. I meet with people. I spend my life being of service to people. So when we go back to Divex's question about how do you become a priest, you become a priest through your own connections. The gods will call you. Now, you may be a general priest of the Wicca, like I serve Wicca, I follow, or you may be a priest of a particular god or goddess. And both ways are fine. I know Wiccans who say, I just serve. And some of them have a connection to many gods, but not specifically one god or goddess. And some have one or two gods that they specifically work with and serve exclusively. And that's okay. In Wicca, we say your connection to divinity is your connection. So we don't judge that. But if you want to be a priest, it requires humility. It means I'm willing to study. It means, you want to be a priest, read every book that you can. At some point, you know, traditionally it's a year and a day after study. If you devote a whole year to going through the cycle of the wheel of the year, you practice the moon rituals, you practice the Sabbath rituals, you read all the books of the Wicca. Then, after a year and one day, I don't know why they do the one day. I think it's just to give you time to prepare. Then you might want to take a self-initiation. If you're not part of a coven that does initiations, you can do your own ritual in your own home. This will make you a priest of the Wicca. So if somebody says, oh, I've been practicing 2 weeks, I'm a Wiccan priest, by most Wiccan traditions, we wouldn't recognize that as a valid priesthood. But if you can say in all truth and honesty, I've studied a year and a day, I've walked the cycle, I've followed the moon, I've learned about the Sun Lord, I've learned the spells, I've learned how to raise power. There's so much that you learn that first year. It changes your whole life. And after that year and a day, then you have the right to initiate, and it will be recognized by Wiccans everywhere as a valid initiation, and you will be a priest of the Wicca. So it's not an overnight thing. It takes time. And what happens for some people is during that year and a day, they discover that they're not really feeling Wicca, or that maybe a different religion is speaking to them. And that's okay. Wicca is not a, what's the word say, a proselytizing religion. We don't say you have to be Wiccan, you better not leave. We say some people are called to Wicca and some aren't. But you can only know that through spending the time and developing your own journey and connection to divinity. And if you say to me, well, gee, Bob, I don't know who the gods are. I don't know what that's about. Well, you'll find the gods. Get to know the gods. You know, Scott Cunningham has a wonderful book, and I know I'm going on a tangent here, but Divex, I think your question is so valuable. He has a wonderful book. It was the very first book I ever read on Wicca, and it changed my world. It's called Wicca, A Guide for the Solitary Practitioner. I don't have my copy here. I'm sorry. It's back in my room in a box. But because I'm putting stuff in boxes to move it so I can make room. But this book, I think, gives you an idea of how to walk through the year in a day. And it will teach you how to set up an altar, what to do, exercises. One of the exercises that Scott recommends is to literally go out every night and just look at the moon and talk to the goddess and visualize. If you can't go out or you don't have a moon, close your eyes and visualize the largest moon in front of you. Feel the solar silver light, or the lunar silver light coming into you. And let that light permeate you. And you will start to develop a rapport with the goddess. Let's see. G-Dog says, I have learned so much from Spirit Channel and Scott Cunningham's books. G-Dog, thank you so very much. I'm very honored that you're here. Anthony Lightburn. Hey, Tony, there you are in the chat. You're out of, Lord Tony said he's out of town at a wedding. Well, that's great, Tony. Thanks for checking in with us. I do appreciate it. And so, anyways, that question about how do you become a priestess, and that's kind of what you want to start with, okay? So I would encourage that. Now, you know, as part of your year in the day studies, you also, as I say, can explore these divination techniques. That's kind of part of learning where your psychic power is, how to access it. I think meditation cannot be emphasized enough. Spending a few minutes every day in silent reflection, maybe exploring scrying could be a meditative practice. All of these things will help you. Another wonderful thing that I've started a tradition of reading the Wicca Oracle cards. Now, these are kind of like a tarot deck, but they're not a tarot. They're different than tarot, but they are a card form of divination. And so you could get a deck like this, and you shuffle it, and every day you start your day by pulling a card and seeing what the message is. And this will help you to learn how to interpret signs, how to interpret symbols. Divination is a wonderful way to learn about your inner self, learn about the spiritual world, learn about the higher beings that guide us. All of that comes through in divination, whatever form you use. And so for your own journey, having a daily spiritual practice. Maybe it's reading an oracle card, or it's looking into your crystal ball. It might be something like, for example, getting up to watch the sunrise. That very rarely happens with Psychic Bob, because I'm a night person. I'll watch the moon rise. And I'll watch the sunset, but I probably won't watch the sunrise, at least not too often. But, find what speaks to you. Find your daily connection, because I think to practice the craft, see, what I have to emphasize, and a lot of you do the craft, you know this, but for the new people, the craft is not like other religions. It's not a set of rules. You have to do this, you have to do that. The craft says, do what you're called to do with joy in your heart. So for you, maybe, looking in the black crystal doesn't work. So you don't have to do that. Nobody's making you. Maybe for you, walking under the moonlight is your connection, and where you get your information, your messages, your connection. So let's explore that. Let's look at, what it is that speaks to you. I think, the word Wicca has some meanings which are very interesting. There's Wicce, which comes from the Old English Wicce, which means, some people say it means to bend. And it means that the Wicca bend their will. The universe, they bend it to their will. We create through our magic our will to manifest. Some say it also means the ancient word for wise. And the Wiccas, certainly, I think many of us, hopefully, are the wise ones. In the old times, the witches of old were the village soothsayers. They were the wise men and women, the cunning men. In fact, the book I'm reading, Triumph of the Moon, talks about Britain's tradition. And Gavin, I want to ask you, because you're in England, have you heard of the old tradition of the cunning men or the cunning women? These were in many little small villages, a man or a woman who would gather herbs. They were proficient with healing. They could tell fortunes. They might scatter leaves. Their divination and magic was very simple. As I said, they might just scatter leaves on a table and see a pattern and be able to read that. They didn't have all the fancy stuff that we have, but with very little, they did very much, and they helped. They knew how to heal. So, the book I'm reading, they argue that it's from the cunning man tradition that Wicca also evolved. So it's kind of a grassroots religion. And as I was saying earlier, it's not a proselytizing faith. We don't go out telling you need to convert. The craft is something that is such a deep religion. People are called to it. People are called to it deep within their souls. And it's not something that you can, easily just jump in. It's not a religion that it's instant. Like, you don't just say, oh, I'm going to be a Wiccan and now I'm a Wiccan. Wicca says, take time, study, learn, reflect, and then And if you're truly called to this path, there won't be any hesitation or doubt. You'll know. And that's why that year and a day is important, you see. I think it's so wonderful, you know. Rebecca Zavala says, I make my own dowsing rods. Oh, I love that. I'd love to see that, Maybe you can send a picture, do a video, or maybe you'll come on and be a guest one week and talk about that. That would be fascinating. I think a lot of people like to learn about that. I've not really worked with dowsing rods, so I'd be very interested in learning about that. Christine C. says, I think the British make great gin. Yes, not only has Britain given us Wicca, they've given us great gin. And I have to tell you, Christine, I love gin as well. So that's my preferred drink. If I am going to have a cocktail, it's gin, definitely. I like a good martini, Daniel Moore says, they're laughing. They said, I'm watching Charmed while listening to this. Bob is fun. Well, thank you. I love Charmed, and I got to tell you, I'm a big Charmed fan. I had the whole series on DVD, and I love it, And now it's on Netflix also. And by the way, speaking of Charmed, did you know that they're coming out with a new Charmed? It's supposed to be out in October. I saw it on, I think it was the WB Network. I'm not being endorsed by WB, but if you go over to the WB Network, they have a big promo for the new Charmed. It's going to be a little different, but it looks pretty good. So I'm going to definitely check that out, you know. Matt B asks, are there any books that you can recommend on alchemy? You know, Matt, I really don't do a lot with that, but I'll tell you, I would explore books by the Rosicrucians. I have some history and connection to the Rosicrucian order, and the Rosicrucians do have some books on that. So if you go to, just look up Rosicrucian Order, AMORC, Ancient Mystical Order of the Rose Cross. They have alchemy books. So that's where I would send you for that. I don't do a lot of alchemy. Alchemy is more high level ceremonial. It's connecting with ceremonial magic, and it's also a form of science, which is wonderful. But I'm more of just a earth magic person. But alchemy, yes. Check out the Rosicrucians, okay? Joey Lightning Storm says, Charmed is amazing. Yeah, I love Charmed. I think the old series is good. I think the new series will be a lot of fun, too. And, yeah, Forever Conscious says that the WB Web Network actually still exists. Yeah, it does. I was surprised, too. You know, I thought they'd closed down. But, yeah, they're around. So, yeah, hold on. We got some more questions here. Fairy Dust says, Silver Dragon Fairy Dust says, what can I do to work on my psychic abilities? Well, you know, as I said, I think the key is start with meditation. And as we're talking about this form of divination tools like the scrying crystal, the crystal ball, the tarot cards, the oracle cards, these are tools that will open that. Now, for some people, they find a tool and they always work with it and it works for them. Some people will find that they have a tool and it opens up another level of psychic energy to where they don't need the tool. When I was first starting as a psychic, I read tarot cards because people were fascinated with tarot and would say, would you do a tarot reading? And even though I was trained as a medium, I also read tarot. But what I found for myself, and I'm not saying this has to be this way for you, because my psychic abilities were growing, tarot stimulated it even more. And I got to where I knew what the cards were before I flipped them. So somebody would come and say, I want a reading, and I'd be laying out the tarot cards in a spread. Before I'd flip the cards, I already knew, oh, they're going to get the Tower card, their whole life is in upheaval, da da da. And to me, it got to where the cards were distracting me from the actual messages I received. So I don't really use, at least in my professional work, tools as much as I used to. But tools will help you get there. So read tarot, use a crystal ball, use a scrying mirror. All of these stimulate the psychic senses and will help you. Now, I'm a big believer in spiritualism, and I think that if you are living anywhere near a spiritualist church or a Wiccan church, this also is a wonderful place to go because there are psychics like myself who actually are there who are trained to train you, and they will help you learn. They'll put you through, when you go through psychic development training, they put you through a series of tests to discover where your strengths lie and where your weaknesses lie. And they actually address both. They help you develop your strengths, but they also push you to develop your weaknesses. And I'll give you an example of this. When I first started as a psychic, I had clairvoyance. I could see everything. And I would see a spirit and say, oh, it looks like your grandfather's here. He's wearing this type of hat and he's smoking a pipe. And people say, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. I thought, well, this is really cool. I'm actually seeing him. But my teacher said, but I don't hear you giving a message. What's he saying? I said, I don't know. I just hear him. I don't talk to them. And what's interesting is that the teacher said, why don't you hear them? I said, well, it's like they're behind glass. Sometimes their mouth moves, but I don't really get anything from them. And she said, well, why don't you tell them to remove the glass? I said, really, it's that simple. So I told the next time I did a reading, I saw a spirit person. I said, I can't hear you. And they'd be talking like, and I'd say, remove the glass. And then they heard me and they're like, he can't hear us. So you have to give your guides feedback. And that's one of the things that psychic development is give and take. The spirit world will give you stuff. You give information and feedback to them. And you develop a rapport. And that will help develop your psychic abilities. Okay? But psychic abilities take time. Even people that are naturally psychic still have to develop them and refine them. So I would encourage you, check out a spiritualist church. As I said, they'll help you with your strengths and your weaknesses. And you'll find out where your strengths lie, and you'll strengthen your weaknesses. I think it's wonderful. Um, Rebecca Zavala says, I tried to do tarot, but I get too confused. You know, Rebecca, let me tell you, that's a really good question to ask. I'm glad you said that, because one of the things I tell people about reading tarot cards, or really any oracle cards, is if you get them, now they have usually a book that comes with it, tells you the meanings of the cards. It's okay to study that. But I think you'll get a better experience if you don't try to read the book. That when you first start, just feel the cards and look at them one by one and ask yourself, what does that card speak to me? You may not understand it right at first, but in time, you'll say, you know what, that card tells me that, money is coming. Now, if you read the book, the tarot book might say that card means that, somebody's moving away from their home. It may not mean by the book's definition, money's coming, but every time you see that card, it means money. You can trust your interpretation over the book, because the person that wrote the book really are just giving their interpretation. And some of it is traditional, but again, times have changed and the images will speak to us differently. So let the cards talk to you. Don't try to study what other people say. If you get the Three of Swords and that means a blessing is coming, that's great. Somebody else will get the Three of Swords and they'll say, oh, there's challenges ahead. But you might get that as blessing. Let it be blessing in your readings, because you'll be more right than wrong. And that's how you start to work with the tarot. I hope that gives you some insight on that. Okay. Dragon Rising 11 says, read Carlos Castaneda's works. For example, most of his training as a Yaqui shaman centered on detachment from the negative manifestations of ego. I've read that book. It's absolutely true. Wonderful. That's one of the things, and when you're starting on the spiritual path, you will confront your dark side and your good. One of the things that a lot of traditional Western religions that are not pagan, like Christianity, Judeo-Christian tradition, teach us that everything is love and light. God's all light, God's all good. But they don't address our own relation of how we relate to that. Because in Wicca, we have dark gods and dark goddesses, and they resonate to our shadow self. Now, our shadow self isn't necessarily evil. It may be the deeper true self in some cases. And so the ego, gets in the way and says, well, I'm a good person, everything's perfect. Well, you might be a good person, but when you get into spiritual development, you might find that not only you have areas which you've not dealt with, you've not, confronted. It's challenging because you have to say, you know what, maybe I messed up in this area. Maybe I'm not always a good person. But when you face that shadow self, it gives you power. And this is why I think many people are fearful of Wicca, because Wicca, when they get into, especially people who just want to play around with it. A few years ago, and I'm not knocking on her, I like Silver Ravenwolf. She's a great author. She's done a lot to popularize Wicca. However, she tried to tout Wicca a lot to the teen community. And a lot of teens, it became just a fashion thing. Oh, I'm going to be Wiccan because I read Silver Ravenwolf's book. And I'm not knocking on Silver Ravenwolf. But it was a phenomena that kind of came out of that. And what happens is when people are not truly ready for the craft and they're just doing it because it's popular, one, they generally don't last very long. Because when they really get into it, if you're not ready to face the deeper, darker self, the spirit world, even, like the black crystal, if that terrifies you, you may not be ready. Now, I'm not saying black crystal will terrify, but what I'm saying is for people to take it to the level that to really practice Wicca, for some people, they're not ready for it. And that's okay. We of the Wicca, we don't, how do I say this? We don't discriminate. We don't expect you to be Wiccan. because it's not for everybody. We're one of the few religions that don't say, come join us. We say, if you're called, then you'll join us. And if you're not, that's okay. We still like you. So we don't have an us-them mentality. It's not like we're Wiccan, we're better, we have all the knowledge. We say we're so blessed as Wiccans because we get to have an experience that maybe not everybody has, but it works for us and it works in our lives. I think that's so important, you know. And so one of the things also that I have to tell you, you know, talking about the Wiccan path is don't take yourself so seriously. Have fun along the way. You know, the first time I did a Wiccan ritual, I was in a coven for a while and I did a group ritual. Partway through we did the charge of the goddess as part of the ritual. We had to memorize the charge of the goddess. We could not read it. It was part of our training. Partway through the charge of the goddess, I just blanked. I don't know. I was blank. And I looked at my teacher and she just burst out laughing. She said, it happens to everybody. And she gave me the next line. She said, you know, da, 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 whatever the line was. And I was like, click back in. And at first I felt so embarrassed. And afterwards she said, isn't it fun to be Wiccan? We can laugh. Even when we mess up, the gods laugh with us. And you know, that made me feel so good because it's like, wow, I messed up the charge of the goddess. And you know what? Everybody had fun because they'd never seen Psychic Bob totally blank. I was doing a flawless ritual. Everything was beautiful. Everybody was really, and all of a sudden I just went blank. I didn't remember where I was in the church. I didn't remember what the line was. I couldn't remember if I skipped it, what the next part was. But once I got that line, I jumped back in. So have fun and don't take it all so seriously. You know, the gods are not up there to strike us. They're not there to hate us. They're here to love us and to support us on our journey. Tika Carr just wrote, she says, do what works for you. Concentrate on healing most of all. Yes, I think that Wicca does. I think that's very good advice, Tika, because I think that Wicca, many people come to Wicca do need healing. Many of us have been abused, myself included, by traditional patriarchal religions. Wicca says there's not a stern God up there casting lightning bolts. There is a goddess who loves you. And Scott Cunningham said in his book, he said, many Wiccans, when they first come, have a trouble embracing the God because most of us, at least in the United States, the United Kingdom, the Western world, have been, many of us brought up with this idea of a stern, judgmental God. And so we have a fear of reconnecting. A lot of Wiccans say, I just don't want to worship the goddess. I don't want to deal with the God. And you can do that. There are Wiccans who solely worship the goddess. But really, traditional Wicca brings balance to the god and the goddess. And so when Tika talks about healing, this is true. A lot of us have to heal that fear, that terror that's been ingrained in us. And the craft does it. It allows you a safe environment to gather with others. And this is one of the reasons as I say, we created the Order of the Purple Cord, because a lot of people want to be in Wicca. They're scared. They don't have anybody. And they think, am I doing it right? Is it wrong? Oh my God, are the gods after me? And when they come to the Order of the Purple Cord, we tell them, you know what? You're doing just fine. And we answer their questions and we help them move on their journey. So, you know, all of you who are part of the order and who come here every week and come to the videos, and when I do Wiccan Wednesday, all of you are helping. It's not just Psychic Bob up here. It's all of us. And we have to remember that, because the cord that we wear, okay, let's look at the cord. Now, for those of you who are new here, if you become a member of the Order of the Purple Cord, you have to make a cord. This is my cord. Now, this is made of purple paracord. You see how it's braided? This is done with a traditional three-fold braid. Plating, it's called, or plaiting. The binding of the cord is like all of us. We're all interwoven. And the current cord is purple because purple is a magical and powerful color. And in the old days, only the most elite could wear purple. Purple was more valuable. Purple dye in the old days, some of you have heard me say this, was more valuable than gold. And then research it. Look up the history of the color purple, and you'll find out. And only royalty was allowed to wear purple. And if you were caught wearing purple in the old days, you could actually be arrested and executed for treason, because it was such a powerful sacred color. Nowadays, of course, purple is easy to make. But in the old days, the purple dye was made from, now don't hate me, none of this is today, this is years ago, was made from snails. They would kill snails. It was not at all animal friendly. But they would have to kill like thousands of snails, like 2,000 or 3,000 snails. They would crush them, and their bodies secreted a fluid from the shell glands, the glands of the body, that would make purple dye. And it was the only way to create the color purple on Earth at that time. We're talking like 2,000, 3,000 years ago. So to make an ounce, like which would be a little jar about that big of purple dye, it would take like 2,000 to 3,000 snails. And they used to make giant vats where they put the snails in and then kill them. Now, isn't that terrible? All those snails had to be killed. But we don't support that. Nowadays, there are modern dyes, and purple is no longer made that way. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, lady. But also in the old days, what people would do, like sometimes a high-ranking official would be out riding, and somebody allowed to wear purple, and their cloak would get torn. And if you were a child back then and you're walking along the street and you see a piece of purple cloth, it was considered magical. So people would find a little scrap, maybe 2 inches square of purple fabric. They treasured it. They'd take it home, put it in a box, and look at it. It was considered sacred because it was so rare. It was like pure gold. And so this is why, we use the color purple. It is magical. It is powerful. And I like to think that the members of our order are the level of royalty. So anyways, I know I'm going on a tangent here. Lynn O'Dell says, Bob, can you get a hard copy of OPC certificate in the mail? Yes, we can get that to you. Contact Lady Angela or contact me at my email below, or Lady Angela, and we'll get one out to you, okay? Not to worry, okay? Right now, we tend to email those, but if you're like somebody doesn't have a printer or you can't do that, we can get you a hard copy, okay? Not a problem, okay? Dragon Rising said, escargot. Oh, Dragon Rising. No, I don't think that's a good thing. But that's, yeah, I suppose so. Anyways. So, anyways, guys, oh my God, I just looked at the time. I don't know where the hour goes. Do you guys feel like I do, like the hours fly? Well, Lord Tony was in the chat tonight. He probably has some of that magical titanium with him and is bending time again. You poor Lord Tony. I pick on him so much and blame him for all the time slips. But, I don't know where the hour goes. Gav is all the way here from England. Do we have anybody else in the chat from England? I don't want to ignore you guys who are here from Europe because I know you stay up awful late to be here. In the United States, for those of you overseas, this is a holiday weekend here. It's called Labor Day. So nobody's working tomorrow. It's a holiday. But, I think that, for those of you who don't have a holiday and you stay up late, thank you so very much. It's wonderful to have you here. Oh, I just saw Raven Fisher is here. Hey, Raven, good to see you. Can you tell us about the most recent aliens visit to Earth? I feel like my husband is being influenced. Raven, real quick, and we're about to go here, but I'll tell you, the aliens are stepping up their visitations to Earth. Next Friday, I'm going to talk more about alien visitations because we're seeing a lot more. I've been getting a lot of calls from people that are having encounters, and some of them are not handling it so well, some are. We're going to talk about that, but just to tell you right now, I do believe your husband is being connected to them. They are reaching out to people through mind-to-mind contact as well as physical contact, and we'll talk about that more on UFO Friday. Good question, though. Well, guys, listen, we are at the time. I don't know where the hour goes. It's one of those crazy time-bending days. But I want to thank you for being here. Listen, if you've enjoyed this, help me out. Like this video, favorite it, share it with your friends. After we're finished with the broadcast, it'll process and you'll be able to get a thumbs up. Tell me in the box below, are there any subjects that you would like us to focus on a whole show on next week? Instead of just doing regular questions, which we can always do, there may be a week where you want a specific topic. We can do a whole hour on that topic. So tell me in the box below, are there Wiccan topics that you want us to discuss here? We'll work on looking at that, okay? Anyways, listen, also got to tell you, if you want to get on my schedule for a private reading, I got the info below how to connect with me. Try my phone. If my phone is not working, contact me through email. My office phone is going to go down. I don't know what day it's going to be down. And I'll explain all that to you next week. But if you want to get on my schedule for a private session, now private reading with me is a full hour. You and I, one-on-one. We can do it through Skype, so we can be live face-to-face. You like you're sitting with me, we can do by telephone. Right now, I'm not doing any more in-person readings, which I'll explain all that next week. But right now, it's going to be phone and Skype because I'm in the middle. I may be moving my office, which I'll tell you, that's a long story. But for now, I'm doing phone readings and Skype, and I'd love to sit down with you because, in a private reading, as I said, you and me one-on-one for an hour, we cover everything. Those of you who have readings with me know we cover your past, your present, your future issues. We cover who your spirit guides are. I bring over messages from them. Deceased loved ones come through. I bring messages from them as well. We cover it all. We look at your past lives. We find your spiritual links, your karmic connections. We look at your life themes. A lot of you have been calling me. You've been saying, Bob, am I a mystical traveler? And there are a lot of mystical travelers on the earth now, so you might be one. And a reading will help you understand what it is to be a mystical traveler and how that's going to affect your journey. So we cover a lot in the reading, and I would love the opportunity to sit down with you guys. But I thank you for being here tonight. I love you guys. You are the best. Hopefully next week we'll have the whole crew back. It's a holiday weekend, so many people are away. Lord Tony's at a wedding. Carol, I think, has been tied up with her house move. Lady Angela is, I think, working late tonight. So we've got a lot going on. But you know what? I'm just glad to be here. I always say, no matter whether we have everybody or just me, we're going to have the witching hour. So I'm glad you guys are here. And I look forward to being in touch with you. And I send you my blessings. Listen, in the box below, it's got links again to my website, my information, also to Lady Angela's website, Lord Tony's. Go over, check them all out because we're all here to be a resource to you. I'd love for you to link up with all of us. And so let us be of service to you. You guys are rocking. I love you. I send my blessings to you. We'll see you back here tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Oh, Monday. You know what that means? Horoscopes. Oh, you got to be here. We're going to cover all the major transits and the horoscopes for every single zodiac sign. So everybody who comes to tomorrow's video will get a little mini reading, a horoscope just for your sign. So make sure to be here. Guys, thanks for being here. I sing good night. A lot of you sending good nights. Thank you so much. Blessings to you. We'll see you here tomorrow for horoscopes. And until then, may you always blessed be.